formalism, which is a very elegant and nice formalism to describe a many particle quantum mechanical system. And this formalism is called second quantization. So we'll start on that. But before that, I will tell you once more about the setup, which I talked about earlier once briefly. So let's see what's the setup. So the problem we are interested is the solution of n particle quantum mechanical system, and the system we want to solve the Schrodinger equation is equal to psi, and this is both are the Hamiltonian is for n particle system and the wave function is also for n particle. So to begin with, we'll discuss in terms of a very simple Hamiltonian, which is I equal to 1 to n. And the solution will look like this. So this H so this is, so although there could be in principle all these kind of terms, there could be all these B2 body terms, B3 body terms, but for simplicity I'm just now talking about this, and I will briefly mention the extra complexity that will arise for that kind of term. But for time being, I'm just talking about there is a single particle potential, not a two particle potential, and there are n particles in the system. So this is called, there is the terminology used for this kind of state, even though it's an n particle state, is that one particle quantum state, in the sense because the Hamiltonian is a one particle Hamiltonian, there is no interaction. So that is why the word is used. So you might think that there is only one particle as if I am talking about, but that need not be. And they are often, and alternatively one use this word labels, or like single particle level or single particle quantum state, because the Hamiltonian is that. So we discussed that a generic state will look like this. Where this list is basically the states where this particle can be in. And this is also similarly R1, R2, R3 and all that. So the statement we made earlier that the set of all psi Li, we can construct a all possible, because they are solutions of a Schrodinger equation. So that means they must be orthogonal. We construct a complete basis of the space of all wave functions of identical particles. So that means they must satisfy this. Okay. So now we will illustrate one example and see what are the kind of situation can arise, and that is something we already talked about it before, but I'll just go over it once more. So we considered earlier these three particle states where I have a system can be in three states, okay, 1, 2 and 3. Okay. So if I want to put my particles in these states, so particle that is located at R1 is in state 1, particle that is located at R2 is in state 2, and particle that is located at R3 is in state 3. So then the corresponding wave function will be phi1 R1, phi2 R2, phi3 R3. These three single particles. But that's not the only possibility, because since they are identical particles in quantum mechanics, so that means this is also a equally legal wave function. And since we don't know what is what, so there is a huge degeneracy present. All these are equivalent state, psi1 R3, and so on. There are these 8 combinations which we have discussed earlier: 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3, and so on. Like these 8 combinations, not 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are the 6 combinations which we have discussed earlier. Was it 6? What was that?
Yes, it was 6, like for 3 particles.
So all these 3 combinations you can write down. So that is one possibility. And we also discussed that's not the only possibility, because there is also, you can put arbitrary phase, arbitrary sign between them. And we discussed by symmetrization possibility, by symmetrization postulate. So this is, let's say, 1, 2, 3 case, the symmetric wave function, but the of R1, R2, R3. So similarly, there can be an antisymmetric wave function, which is 1, 2, 3 at R1, R2, R3. Where you take this all the combinations which is of this up triangle, and all the combinations, and minus all the combination that is in down triangle. I'm just keeping lot of writing. And that is, these are the 2 possible combinations, but there are many other combinations possible, which are also Schrodinger equation solution. This is a highly degenerate space. But as we said, that symmetrization postulate tells you that there are only 2 possibilities which we will consider right now in 3D space, and other possibilities will, for time being, will forget about that. So now let's consider another situation where I have 3 particles, but 2 of them is in the same state. So that is also possible in another possible situation. So I can write it down. So this one tells me that the particle are definitely like this. Okay. But I can equally write another situation where things are like that. Like that, or any other arbitrary configuration. So then the wave function for such a state will be, I am not writing it symmetric, antisymmetric. Or any other. So I am just telling you all the possibilities. All 3 could be in 1. All 3 could be any arbitrary combination. So let's say if all 3 is 1, there are these possibilities: phi3 R1, phi2 R2. There are many levels: phi4 R3, and so on. So all these combinations are basically written as phi L1 R1, phi L2 R2, phi L3 R3. And all these possibilities are, and we will see that how to construct a grand wave function, or basically the superposition wave function, which is a sum of all these possibilities. Either it's with a plus sign or with a minus sign. So that is what we'll see. So but now if I have a state like that, I can easily calculate the energy of that state, and that number will be simply E equal to I equal to 1 to n E n I. So that basically, I'll tell you, there are n levels, capital N levels, and all I need to know is how many particles are there in each level. That basically completely specifies the state. And if there is this kind of degeneracy, which means 2 particles in one level, so basically all I need to know what is the degeneracy of each level. That's the only information that matters. No other information is relevant because of the symmetrization postulate or the symmetry structure of the problem. So to be very precise, the total energy is K equal to all the possibilities Ek Nk, assuming there are infinite particles. So this is basically number of particles in state. In state, or we agreed to use the word level for these single particle states. So let me call it level. In level K. And this is basically, so if I write down this set, that basically tells you everything that is there to know about the system. In shorthand, this is that. And there are many combinations. So if I write down this, there are many different ways that can happen, and we have computed that in the class before the last class, and that degeneracy is whatever in infinity. So if I give you a given level, a given set of numbers, we know that there is a huge degeneracy behind that, and that degeneracy is this. The total energy is this. This is the complete specific description of the state, and this is the degeneracy behind. Now, up to this, we have not used anywhere the symmetrization postulate or anything. I'm just saying all the possibilities that is there, the statistical possibilities. But symmetrization tells you there are not that many states. It's not like that many states are that many possibilities. There is only one state, which is basically a superposition of all these. So now I bring in a symmetrization postulate, and the statement is there is only single quantum state corresponding to each set of occupation numbers. So these nks are called occupation numbers. It tells you how many particles are occupying a particular single particle level nk. So there is only one single state. So if that single quantum state is symmetric, that is given by, that is written like this. This is all something we already discussed, okay? So I'm going a little fast. Where P is all the possible permutation, all the possible pair permutation. And I'm summing over all of the possible permutation. So this is sum over that. And C is the normalization constant. And we also showed that normalization constant can be very simply computed. That is basically, if I demand this, so this is basically C square, and each of these single particle states are basically are orthonormal. So you will be left over with this sum, which is how many copies or how many number of that you have. So you will be left over with this sum. And that number we know, so this thing will fire only if it is delta pp. So that is basically C square, the number of permutations, and that we have computed from here. That tells me that, so this thing must be equal to 1. So that means the C must be n1 factorial, n2 factorial, n infinity factorial divided by n factorial. So we learned that's how we will write a particular single particle state. A particular n particle state for when I am in the symmetric wave function. I will come to the antisymmetric in a moment, but let me give you an example that how this works in a more concrete basis. Okay. So let's say I have 3 particles, and they can be in the configuration 2 1 0 0 0 0 0. Right? This is my nk set, the set of nks. So given this nk information, what is my wave function? My wave function is symmetric wave function 1 2 3 is 1 by square. So I will bring the factorial thing later, but let's just write it down. So it must be phi 1 r1, phi 2, phi 1 r2, phi 2 r3. There will be 6 terms, right? Just the way we do it. But except in this 6 term, 2 are exactly same. So if I write it in this way, phi 1 r1, phi 2 r2, phi1 R3 plus phi2 R1 phi1 R2 phi1 R3. Then this factor tells me this thing must be 1 by root 3, because this is basically root 2 by root 6. So this is basically 2 factorial 1 factorial 1 factorial divided by 3 factorial, this quantity. So this is how I will write down based on this prescription. But I can also alternatively write it down by starting by this triangle picture of this psi1 to this psi2 3 to 1, and you will see a set of term appears twice because there is this situation here. So that is why you add them up, and that will cover your 1 by root 6 factorial, and that will make it look like this. Okay, this is clear so far, right? How do I write down a particular state of any n particle? I can do it for any n particle, but I am showing you how to do that for at least just 3 particles. You can just make this, I suggest you to just write down the triangle diagram which I have shown earlier and put 1 1 2 there and write it down in this way, and this is just a compact way to do the same thing. This is just a compact way to do the same thing when you have n particle. Of course, when you have n particle, you cannot draw such a diagram. So you need a more elegant way to do the similar thing. Okay. Now, I want to do it for the antisymmetric wave function. So now the antisymmetric. So the way to write it down for the antisymmetric is, again, sum over all the possible. We will introduce something called a parity of wave function, or sorry, parity of permutation. So don't mix it with the actual parity. I'll tell you in a moment what is that. So this is odd. Odd means odd or negative. What did it happen? Where is this 9 came from? Is obtained oh my god, what did I do? Is there a way to undo it? Yeah, okay, thankfully. Is obtained by, what is this line appearing here and disturbing? By an odd number of, okay, it's just a barrier somehow created of permutations, and this is even if obtained by even number of permutations. Again, we go back to our favorite example, which is this 3 particle state, and see what does it mean. So you can, again, I suggest you to again draw the diagram and try to show it. First of all, you will discover that if you can just take this 1 2 3, this 3 particle thing. If I have the diagram, let me just draw it. I think I forgot to bring that page. Yeah, I have it. Good. 1 2 3 1 3 2 3 1 2 3 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 3. So just to understand the meaning of parity. So meaning of parity means if this wave function is a plus sign, this state is obtained from this state by one permutation. Okay, even odd number, one is odd number, so odd number of permutation. So if this is with a plus sign, this will come with a minus sign. But from here to here, the relation between this wave function and this wave function, this wave function and this wave function, is by an even number of permutation, because it is twice, you did twice permutation. And since I said that every permutation will give you minus sign, so two permutation will give you a plus sign. So that is why this triangle are odd permutations, they will give you a minus sign, and this triangle will give you a plus sign. So that is how you construct the full antisymmetric wave function. And the elegant way to write down it is this way, because of course for n particle again you cannot draw such a diagram, and that will be very tedious to get anything out of that. So we use this compact notation. Now there is another nice way to look at it, another nice way to describe it. So you can also write this thing, this n particle wave function psi a n k as C. So this C is the same C, the normalization factor of determinant of M, where M is, because that exactly, this thing is exactly the definition of determinant. A pair permutation of two objects in a matrix gives you a minus sign, where Mij is a matrix that is given by phi Li Rj. So if I write it in terms of this in a matrix form, so this is basically C times determinant of this matrix, phi L1 R1 phi L2 R2 dot 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 phi Ln, no sorry, phi Li is first, so L1 R2 L1 Rn phi L2 R1 phi L2 R2 phi L2 Rn, and so on, like phi Ln R1 phi Ln R2 dot dot dot, like that. And you can verify it if you are not very easily getting this abstract notation. You can again verify it for the three particle problem. Write down as like phi 1 R1, phi 2 R2, phi 3 R3. Sorry, this is 1, this is 1. Phi 2 R1, phi 2 R2, phi 2 R3, phi 3 R1, phi 3 R2, phi 3 R3. Take determinant, and you will see what you will get is basically this combination, up triangle minus down triangle, and that's easy to see because it determinant means you take this term, multiply it by this term minus this term, so automatically a odd flip will pick up a minus sign. So that is how it is written. So there is actually a very elegant way to write it, even more elegant way. So for the bosons, you can also say there is a term called permanent. I don't know if you are familiar with that. So permanent is exactly like determinant, where instead, because in determinant what you do, you write this term as phi 1 phi 2 R3 minus phi 1, you write phi 1, this product of these two terms, minus phi 1 product of these two terms. In permanent what you do, you add them, which means you say phi 1 product of these two terms and phi 2 product of these two terms. So that is why there is a very nice elegant way to write it. You just say a n particle wave function, you write down in terms of this determinant. So the way to write it is basically psi nk a is basically C times date M, and psi nk s is C time permanent M. So that is just an elegant way to write it. But now notice one important thing from here. So if any two of them are same, which means if instead of phi 1, phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, if I have phi 1, phi 1, phi 2, then this thing will obviously be 0 because of the character of determinant. If any two rows are same, they will give you exactly 0. So in the case of this 2-1 configuration, so in this configuration, that is 2-1-0, this thing is basically phi 1 R1, phi 1 R2, phi 1 R3, phi 1 R1, phi 1 R2, phi 1 R3, and this is phi 2 R1, phi 2 R2, phi 3 R3. So we know that in a determinant, if two rows are identical, that will obviously give you 0. So that means if you try to construct an antisymmetric wave function where two particles are in the same site, such a wave function is always 0. So that tells you two particle cannot be in the same state if the wave function is antisymmetric. And that is basically the Pauli exclusion principle. So Pauli exclusion principle was empirically known before all this thing came up, before Fermi-Dirac came up with their description. But then after the description came, then people knew that why it is there. It is already inbuilt in the quantum mechanics structure. So this tells you the occupancy Nk for fermion can be only 0 or 1. It cannot be 2. That is the maximum. So from there you can compute the C. The C is again n1 factorial, n2 factorial, like that, n infinity factorial by n factorial. But now these guys are only 0 or 1. So that means for fermions, for antisymmetry wave function, this is 1 by n factorial. So that is basically the whole description. So now let me complete it by writing it down properly. So this is 1 by n factorial, and this is product of ni factorial divided by n factorial, square root, both are square root. So that is basically a complete description of a quantum mechanical wave function of n particles within this symmetrization postulate, which tells you there are only two possibilities. Now if I tell you this kind of problem, that put 3 particles in a box or in a harmonic oscillator, or 3, 4, n, whatever, you should be able to precisely write down the wave function for that, because now you know how to do that using this single particle picture. So that's the class of problem which you need to be very smooth at. Okay, now one more thing I wanted to emphasize at this point, and that point is, I hope now you can appreciate the whole thing that people talk about this quantum computing and all this. So now you can, so this is a side statement. So now you can imagine, so even though, so in this case I didn't bring in any spin. So even if I would have brought a spin, that would have been very similar. So let me bring in the spin for a moment, and then I'll get back to this statement of what one means when one say that quantum computers are very supreme and all that. So let me tell you one more statement about spin. So these wave functions, everything I have discussed so far, I have not brought into spin anywhere. But spin can be, all these particles could have a spin and a coordinate, like a normal electron does. So spin degrees of freedom will be there. But the statement about spin is that, so the wave functions, when they are symmetric, they are bosonic, and such a wave object will have only integer spin. And antisymmetric, they are fermionic, will have half integer spin. Now it might appear this statement a little bit ad hoc, because what is the relation between these two? You won't immediately get it. But you will learn this later, something called spin statistics theorem. Just know about this statement for now, and you will learn it later, which tells you why this connection exists and it requires a Lorentz invariance. But it turns out even when you don't have Lorentz invariance, this statement is true, and that is so you cannot prove the statement there, but it is empirically known to be true. Okay, so this is what I wanted to tell about spin, but let me spend 2 minutes about telling you, if you have not already appreciated, that what is so cool about like quantum computing based on these n particle states. So before I tell you this, just a few comments about that. Since many of you are actively into this quantum computing kind of thing, can someone comment that what is the main point of quantum computing? What is the main deal? Any comment?
So could you rephrase your question?
Yeah, so I am just telling you, can you tell me what is the main point of quantum? What is the main deal? What we are looking for? Why it is better? Why it is, what is this, what one means when one say quantum supremacy? Or even if you leave the terminology, forget the terminology, what is in your mind the main advantage of quantum computing? What's the main advantage? Yeah, tell me just that much. Can someone comment on that? Yeah, superposition is true, but it is too vague an answer. Of course, you can say all the things: superposition, entanglement, uncertainty, all the things what is there. But what is the main point? What are you trying to do? And why do we care? Far more than, yeah, I get it, but why? Why it can? These are very, what will I say? The answers you are giving are not from code. They are like very surface level answer which you can get it by reading any book. What is the main deal? Tell me that. I mean, did someone think about it?
Sir, I think so. The main thing is it goes back to the Turing machine that Turing made. So it was basically one square, like one say memory pit will have either 1 or 0. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how the entire computation world was built on.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that that was basically binary. But I think so in this quantum computation, what will happen in one state, there can be multiple number of what you say information, just not 1 and 0, and it can be dynamic. So the thing is that it's like this is the abstract that I got after reading things. But yeah, so that's the
Well,
thing that
you are in the right direction, right, making the right approach. Can someone, or you only, anyone can build on that? Can you say what do
Because
a
you can build
computer?
superposition of
Yeah,
states.
sorry. Say that. Your
Sorry.
voice cut.
Because you can make superposition of states, it's not just 1 and 0. You can store more information by superpositions in quantum.
Yeah, but it is still a little vague. So let me just tell you
Yeah.
what I wanted to hear. Yeah,
Yeah, so
Shubham. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you. I was waiting for you. Tell me. You are
yeah,
the
so
one of the.
classically, suppose we have classically we have two bits, right? Suppose 0 and 1,
Huh,
and we make a combination of all this to process the data.
huh,
Now, quantum mechanically, what we see, we can use a single qubit,
huh.
and at the same time, like I can use the superposition of 0 state and 1 state,
Mm-hmm.
and such that if I measure, I will get any one state. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
I can like in one qubit, I can feed the information of 2 bits information. I can just put on only one qubit.
Okay, that is very much in the right direction. But what I actually wanted to hear from you is a more concrete answer. But yeah, you are all are right. But let me get a bit more concrete,
so
because this is should be a more physicist answer.
yeah,
Sorry.
can we say it like this? Like one qubit, we know, like in classical mechanics, when like one bit will be either like it will either have 1 or 0. But
Mhm.
in the qubit scenario, we can have it like until and unless we measure it,
This
we
is
don't
true.
know.
What you are saying, it is true. But I am saying,
Yeah.
where
So,
is the advantage? Where is
oh, okay.
exactly the advantage? Okay, I wanted to hear a little more precise,
Okay.
direct answer. Okay. Walking salesman. I don't even know what's. I mean that. Okay. Anyway, let me try to tell you and see if it is a little more satisfactory. It might turn out that it is. I'm making so much fuss. Okay, so in a what a computer do, what a classical computer do. Actually, maybe I should keep this discussion for the end of the class. Okay, let me keep that discussion for the end of the class, because then I'll put it in the part of extra things. I'll come back to this point. Okay, let's keep this and move on for time being. Think about it. I mean, I'll come back once after 5:20 on this. But this is a good point to ask this question. Okay.
Sir, I have a from quantum simulation part. I can say something like in superconducting qubits, we use a Josephson junction to simulate a more complicated system, quantum system, and that junction we can control more efficiently as compared to normal systems. So, like,
this is not also the main point. This is not the essence. I mean, this is of course efficient. Okay, fine. That doesn't tell you you can have in principle a better computer also, a better classical computer where you can control it more efficiently. But there is a fundamental character, and for that you have to understand what a classical computer actually does. So, are you familiar with these two words, simulation and emulation?
simulation, I am familiar.
Okay, think about that. I'll come back to this at the end of the class. Okay, let me just finish the material which is actual. This is a discussion which will spark debate, so I'll come back to it at the end. Okay, so now I will introduce a concept called Fock space, which is a system or a way to describe. So by the way, in this many particle, this part where like bosons, fermions and all, they have a very rich history of this subject. You should also look it up into that. In this class, I won't have time to do all that. Like how S.N. Bose landed on this thing when he was like he just finished MSc and became a faculty at Calcutta University and didn't even have a PhD. He actually never had a PhD. He had a lot of trouble for that. So he just did some calculations. He sent a letter to various people. Nobody cared for it. Only Einstein looked at it and thought there is something into it. Einstein translated it, published in a German journal, and it became a big sensation and all that. So there is a very rich history behind this. There is also a very rich history behind the story of Fermi and Dirac, who were in the Manhattan Project at that point of time. There's a lot of story behind how these things got uncovered.
So didn't S.N. Bose give a general form of the photon statistics basically? So he gave another explanation for the black body.
Radiation formula.
Yeah, black body.
And for that you needed to assume that you needed to take this into account, that what kind of statistics these multiple photons have, and that is Bose-Einstein statistics. And that was seen at that point of time. So S.N. Bose didn't fully realize what is it. He said it's a convenient technique to calculate that formula. But that convenient technique, why that works and why that reveals a deeper principle of nature, that's what Einstein appreciated. And then he wrote it and published it, and he called it, that's why people call it Bose-Einstein statistics. And these particles are called bosons and all that. So fermion and Fermi-Dirac has a similar, not that kind of a thrilling story, because they are not coming from one person is not sitting, a very young person in a third world country. It was not that thrilling, but yet it was very interesting that how they came up to that and gave an explanation of the empirical Pauli exclusion formula, which was known from spectroscopy and chemistry. Okay, so now we will go. So this guy is also a very interesting character, the Vladimir Fock, who came up with the Fock space idea. There's a lot of story, very rich story behind this. When the first quantum revolution, people call this second quantum revolution we are living in now. When the first quantum revolution happened, it was in the war setting, in the World War time. So there's a lot of interesting stories when what happened, but we will not go over that. Okay, so then we will go to an idea called Fock space, which is a convenient way to represent this many particle quantum state. And we have realized that it is obviously there because because we know that a many particle quantum state is it doesn't matter that which particle is where. The only thing matters is how many particles are there in each state. So hopefully I convinced you about that. So Fock space is a way to represent a many particle quantum state in a sleeker manner where you throw out all that information which you don't need. So that is the whole idea. So the purpose is to, it's a system. Why these things are coming when I don't want it? A system to write down the wave function of many identical particles. So that is basically the Fock space. And as we also realize that for a system of many identical particles, most solutions, there are many possible solutions of Schrodinger equation. Most solution of Schrodinger equation are redundant. So only completely symmetric or completely anti-symmetric solutions are allowed according to the symmetrization postulate, which is, I mean, again, I should mention that within the domain of applicability of symmetrization postulate, which is 3-dimension. So completely symmetric within the domain of and this symmetric and anti-symmetric are, we know, as bosons and fermions. Although there are any set of, like, there is an arbitrary set of occupation number that correspond to an unique set, an unique state,
Sir?
which is basically the symmetrization postulate is telling you.
Oh,
Tell me.
yeah, got it. No, above the
Yeah.
line you wrote SP. I was asking whether that's symmetry postulate or some other notation.
Yeah, that's
got it.
symmetry postulate. So what I'm trying to tell you here, that all these combinations, the statistics, this large number of shuffling degeneracy, basically it implies there is one state, just one quantum mechanical state, but the particle is, the set of particles is in these all possible combinations, degenerate configuration at the same time, which is the basic core idea of quantum mechanics. And at this point, I would also like to tell you that all the basic ideas of quantum mechanics, we have gone through these all ideas painstakingly in the last semester for a long time in the first part. So, but whenever these ideas appears, it might appear peculiar to you, but they are not new. They are not something new fundamentally. They are all hidden in that double slit and Stern-Gerlach experiment. So whenever you are confused, you should always go back to that, and that will happen. That will continue to happen for maybe 1 year, 2 years from now. Even if you finish your quantum mechanics course, it won't be a part of your thinking so easily. I mean, there was this story that there was a person who knew many languages, and people couldn't figure out which place he is from. So the story was that how do they figure it out, that which place he is actually from, and he doesn't tell it because he knows many languages, speak it so efficiently. He cannot, one cannot make out that where is this person coming from, and if he doesn't tell it. So one taste of that, somebody suggested that like push him on the road or make him suddenly give him something such that he gets very angry, and then he will say some curse words, and that curse words have to be in his native language. because it is a part of his system. It is a part of his being. So, and that turns out people did that experiment and turns out it is true. So it is similar to that. So quantum mechanics is not a part of our system yet. We know this is true, but we don't really believe in it. And whenever something happens like this, it appears to be peculiar, a new thing. But it is not a new thing. It is within what happened already in double slit and Stern-Gerlach experiment. So you have to go back to that every time you see and something which betrays your intuition, and that is, if you continue this process, if you be on it, after some year maybe it will become part of your system. Then whenever you are in distress, you can think quantum mechanically, or like by distress I mean whenever you are encountering a challenging situation. Okay, so that is the tip. And more you spend time on it, more quickly that will happen. Otherwise it won't be a part of your system. You will know this just like a set of facts which were given to or imposed on you. Okay, so this idea that any set of occupation number, they are like a unique set, represent an unique state, and that is what the symmetrization principle tell you. And
Sir, and one more thing, yeah, out here one state is defined by a particular energy, right?
yeah, but there can be
Okay.
degeneracy also in that.
Yeah, degeneracy
Yeah.
is there, but once we say that this state, it means suppose say a particular energy E. Okay, so got it.
Yeah, that energy can be, that particular energy can be in very different way, but the energy defines the state, of course, if you are interested about states of a given energy. So this whole picture, this suggests basically all basis states of a many body quantum system can be characterized by just a set of occupation numbers. So this is what we have convinced ourselves so far, and that is basically the whole idea behind Fock space. So we will see that how to do that. Okay. So let me give you a prescription that how do you construct a Fock space. So let me call it how to construct a FS. So there are 4 key points into that. These key points are something we have already visited. The first point is, we start with the space of all possible solutions of QM. Or SCH, or the Schrodinger equation with n particles. And that is given by this set. The entire set. Phi L1 R1, phi L2 R2, phi Ln Rn. Then we define, so first we combine all of them, combine all of these for all possible n, all possible numbers, and we introduced a special basis state which is for n equal to 0, that means 0 particle, and we'll call it the vacuum. We'll see the significance of this vacuum in a moment. And then we construct the symmetric and antisymmetric combination of this basis state which satisfy the symmetrization postulate. And finally, so this is of course a part extension of the third point, we throw away the rest. We throw away all the rest of the throw away the other states. that are not according to the symmetrization postulate. So this is the 4 basic steps of this Fock space, and this, after you perform this force operation, so now you have states which have number of particles can be 0 to infinity, and all the combination of those states. So resulting set of basic states gives you the basic states of Fock space, and they can be uniquely characterized by a set of numbers. That is given by this. So this is n1, n2, dot 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 dot, like that. And this is basically the occupation level. Occupation number of level k, the single particle level k. And these numbers can be only 0 or 1 if it is an antisymmetric combination. That is what we already discussed. Now we also want to make sure that we can go from one to another, which means if I am given this nk, from there I can go to the actual wave function state and vice versa. So we want to also want such a translation, but for that we need to know all the single particle wave function, which means if I give you, for example, a Fock space state which is 2 1, a 3 level 2 1 0. So from here you know how to write down the wave functions, if you provided you know what the single particle wave functions are. So for example, this could be a n particle state for a harmonic oscillator. Then we have to write down the single particle wave function in terms of the harmonic oscillator wave function. Like they will be like this harmonic oscillator, or it could be 3 particles in a box. It will be the 3 particle wave function, the particle in a box wave function. And also to note that this whole thing forms a complete basis. We will see how it is forming that.
So one thing out here, what is like once we say the second and third criteria that you said, the combination of all possible bases, what you say, sorry, the first and second, we state with the space with all possible solutions of the Schrodinger equation, and then we have the symmetric and antisymmetric and throw away the other things. So this entire operation is happening in the Hilbert space, right?
Yeah.
So what it is like, how is this Fock space unique from that Hilbert space? Is it a niche of Hilbert space?
No, yes, it is basically a way to represent the Hilbert space of n particle system, but it is entirely in terms of the occupation number, nothing else. We don't write down the wave function. We just need to know how many are there in which level.
Okay.
So that is the whole picture.
Oh, for that we introduce the Fock space.
Yes. The Fock space is a description in terms of that.
So Fock space itself is a niche of Hilbert space, we can say.
Yeah, you can say, oh, well, I forgot. What do you mean exactly by niche?
Niche as in, like, suppose we say that integers are a part of the real space.
No.
Like that.
First of all, I don't think that's the meaning of niche, and this is not like that. A Fock space is an alternative description of the Hilbert space, where you keep only the relevant part of the information you need, right? So that is all.
Okay.
So from here we will go to something called a language for that. It's called second quantization. Why it is called second quantization, that I will describe later. I'll tell you later. But let's first see that what is this description. The description is nothing but describing the whole system in terms of this kind of thing. So as I said, that we want a state which has no particle, 0 particle. So that state is this. So this, I call this the vacuum, or alternatively we can call it the vacuum. And then we will build up all the elements of this Fock space or this Hilbert space in this number basis by using creation and annihilation operator. So that means what I'll do, creation and annihilation So I'll first do it for bosons, which means symmetric wave functions, and then I'll do it for fermions, because the bosons is a little easy to understand. So I have the, as I said, that the one element of the Fock space is this, which is 0 particle state, and there are all possible other state, 1 particle state, 2 particle states, 3 particle state, n particle states, all that. So I want to build up all these starting from here. For that, and a generic state is this: n1, n2, all that, like whatever, n infinity. So how do I do? So for that, I use the creation and annihilation operator language, and that is given by, so let's say I have an operator which acts on the kth state, and what it does, if that state has k particle, there is a factor, which is the factor, I'll tell you what that factor is, does the following. It kills 1 particle from there, nk minus 1, like that. Now notice that I have defined the operator like that. I will tell you if such a operator exists, what kind of properties do they have, that I'll describe in a moment. But you might be tempted to think at this point that because you have seen this creation and annihilation operator earlier, and you have seen they are performing certain role, you might be tempted to think that these two might be exactly the same. But turns out they are not exactly the same, but they are very similar, and there is a way to connect these two. So what did we do with the creation and annihilation operator earlier? We did the following: we had a system of harmonic oscillator. We did it describe it for harmonic oscillator, but it is applicable for any potential which has a certain form. So we said that if a particle is in state 1, if I apply it an annihilation operator, it will go to state 0. And similarly, we said if I apply a creation operator, it will go to state 2. So we used it to go in up or down in the ladder. So it's only one particle, not many particles. It is just going up or down in the states. But here I am talking about something different. So that is why we will see that these operators will have a certain set of different properties. But I mean, their range of applicability or domain of applicability is different. But we'll also see there is a way to go from one language to another language. This is a language of quantum mechanics, and this reveals some fundamental things or fundamental structures about quantum mechanics. As I said, that there are 9 different languages or 9 different formalism of quantum mechanics. This is one of them. So this operator does the following: it starts, you start with a particular state. For example, the state is, let's say, like that: 1 particle here, 2 particle here, 1 particle, 3 particle here. And since it is bosonic, it can have as many particles you want. There is no rule. Now, if I apply this operator, this BK operator on the kth state, let's say this state has 2 particles, let's say. So it will kill 1 particle, which means you will be left with a state. If the total number of particles in this case is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there are 9 particles. So the state you will get will have 8 particles. So that's the job of this operator. This kills this particle, is annihilate this particle. Now you might ask, is it violating energy conservation? If you are removing a particle, where did that go? The number conservation, all that. I'll come back to that point. Right now, let's imagine I have all the possible number of particles, and if I create a particle, similarly it will add a particle in that state. It will make it 3. So now here you will have 8 particles. In this case, you have 10 particles. So that gives you. So now you agree to this much, that if I start with vacuum and I have an operator like that, which this might again appear to you a little peculiar, because earlier what we have done, we had some physical object, and then we said, let's say, momentum, position, and then we said, okay, in quantum mechanics there will be an operator representation of that, and that operator is some Hermitian operator. But here we are starting with an operator. We have not yet discussed what does it physically mean, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But the job of the operator is to kill or create an entire particle. And we will see that if I have such an operator, I can create the entire Hilbert space starting from here. I can keep adding, I can create the Hilbert space. Just like here we did. If I start from the ground state, I can keep applying the operator again and again, and I can go to all the states like that, climb up the ladder or go down. But instead here, we don't have one particle, we have many particles. So we add a subtractive operator. So now is the role of this operator clear? If it is clear, that's where we will stop for today, and tomorrow we will discuss about the
Excuse me, sir.
about the formalism with this operator. Yeah.
So this A operator or A dagger, is it some sort of like S plus and S minus, which
Yeah, S plus and S minus does the same thing. It takes you, so what the S plus and S minus does in a two-level system, you have a up or down. Okay. If you apply the S plus on this, you go here. If you apply the S plus on this, you go nowhere, because that there is no place to go. That is not allowed. You get 0. But if you apply the S minus on this, you come here. But if you apply the S minus on this, again you go nowhere, because there is no other place to go. It's similar to that, right?
so in S plus and S minus we have some restrictions. So do we have the same restrictions?
Here also you have a restriction. In this operator, this harmonic oscillator, there is no restriction of going up, but there is a restriction on going down, that we discussed extensively, right?
Yes.
There is a bottom of the well. And there are systems where you have bottomless potential, like this conformal symmetric system, this 1 by x square potential. There you don't have a bottom, but here you have a bottom, so you have to stop somewhere. That gives you the ground state, the vacuum or whatever.
Sir, are you using some way like Pauli exclusion principle in this, like so?
No, not at all, nowhere. This is boson. This is all boson so far. In this second quantization, I have not brought Pauli exclusion yet. The last time I talked about Pauli exclusion is here, when I said these fermionic wave functions.
Okay, sir.
Excuse me.
Why did this is really weird. It looks like two sets of writing piled on top of each other. I don't know how that happened. Anyways.
It's like, sir, one question I have out here is like, we know this formalism, but can you say us like what was the thought process of the people back when they were formalizing this thing to come up with such an
they
operator?
just
Because
notice this fact. This is the main thing.
what was the fact, sir?
That you don't need which particle is in which state. The only thing for identical particle, it matters that how many particles are in a given state. So then people means Vladimir Fock, he thought that one can possibly describe, one can cut the clutter, basically, throw away all the information which you don't need, and just think in terms of the number of particles.
Okay, got it.
That was the thought process. Of course, it is not easy. Now I am saying he thought that, but it was not easy at that point. But those are like groundbreaking works. The
Sir,
class is over, by the way. These are just questions.
I have some doubt from the previous class, sir. So we can stop the recording and we can discuss.
Yeah, but I will talk a little bit about this quantum computation statement I made earlier.
Yes, sir.
So can you tell briefly what the doubt is? If we can answer it immediately without doing anything else special, I can answer it quickly. If I can answer it immediately, or if I need to think, I'll go back to that. Yeah.
Sir, in yesterday's class, we were like in the case of this identical and indistinguishable. Suppose we consider two electrons, and I read in that book, when considering two electrons, at that time we are having a negative phase factor while they are scattering.
No, forget scattering for time being, but I'm just saying if they're exchanged, they will pick up a minus sign. That is the negative phase factor you are talking about, right?
Exactly, sir. I don't understand
that is
how
true.
How it is arriving, sir. Like
why
that negative thing, sir?
But that is what we are discussing for last 3 lectures. We are saying there are many possible ways to exchange two electrons, right? So there are many possible combinations. Okay, for 2 there is not many. For 2 it is just either 1 2 or 2 1. Now that means they can either have a e to the power I. So then they are just two degenerate states, right? So what I was saying is that it is psi 1 2 and psi 2 1, right? These are the two possibilities, which is psi 1 x1, psi 2 x2, and psi 1 or psi 2 x1 psi1 x2, right? These are the only two possibilities with two electrons. Now, why there will be a relative phase? So the total wave function for this, because you don't know what is where, the total x1, x2 will be a combination of these two. And in principle, there can be any phase. There could be any superposition of that. But symmetrization principle tells you in 3D, there are only two possibilities, which is this alpha is 0 or pi. Z2, it's a Z2 symmetry. But that is not true in 2D, because we have discussed this extensively with this braiding diagram or this braid group, that you can exchange two particles and the history of the exchange matters. You cannot delete, because when you try to close the loop, you cannot. But in 3D, that history doesn't matter. So in 2D, there is actually a possibility, which is alpha is not 0 or pi. And that gives you a different class of particles called anyons. So symmetrization postulate is not true there. Right?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And another one thing, sir. Suppose I'm taking two electrons, and these two electrons are identical. And if I'm considering the spin, suppose both are spin up. So now these two electrons will be identical and indistinguishable, right?
Yeah, if both of them are spin up, yes.
Yeah. And
But there, as I said, the identical indistinguishable means the point of indistinguishability appears in this context only, I mean the quantum mechanics context.
And yes, sir. So the experiment, it's like this: like they took two electrons, and both were spin up. So now this is identical and indistinguishable, right? And suppose I consider a second scenario in which I have two electrons, but they have opposite spins. Like one is spin up and another is spin down. So they are identical and distinguishable, right?
Yeah, because they have a different label.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
But it is exactly like this, right? So this is 1 and 2. So you can say this is spin up and spin down. So this is and this is down or up. Right? But they can be one up, one down, but they can be both up, but you don't know which is which. So that is the point. So yeah, so actually I think I didn't get your question entirely. So both are identical and indistinguishable, because even though they have two different labels, you don't know what is what. So that is why the wave function for this and that both will be like this. So if for up and down, the wave function will be this, and up and up also it will be like this. And that is why this is also a state, like this is also a state. It will be either this, or in this case it's also like this. So probably if I get your question right, you are saying are they any different? In that case, no, both are superposition states. Both of these are superposition states. It's not like one case you will say, though they are different, so they must be like this. There is no other possibility.
Sir, but if you consider the spin up, spin down, then we can distinguish, right? Like that one is spin up, we know.
You can, but you don't know what is what. That is the label of the state, right? This is the label. This is the label of the state. Do you understand this point, this picture? Psi 1, psi 2.
Yes, sir.
So there could be an arbitrary label. So psi, alpha, and x. This is a label. Now I don't know if the electron that is located at location 1, x1, is in up state or down state. So that is where this indistinguishability will come. Right?
Yeah, fine, sir.
More questions?
Yeah, sir. When you were talking about Pauli's exclusion principle, you were restricting it to fermions, right?
Yeah, of course, that has to be so, because Pauli's exclusion. Where is the exclusion principle coming from? Oh, so I get it, why it is happening like that, because I dragged it so quickly. Okay, now it looks fine. Yeah. So where is this coming from? If you look at this, if your wave function is antisymmetric, and if you try to put two of them in one state, then the combination, this determinant will vanish, or the wave function will become 0. So that means it will tell you such a wave function doesn't exist. So that rules out the possibility of a wave function, of a many body wave function, superposition wave function, where two particles are in one state, right? So that is the main thing about Pauli exclusion principle. So you need antisymmetric wave function in order to get Pauli exclusion principle, and antisymmetric wave functions are for fermions.
Okay, but and also when you were explaining how to construct a Fock space, you were saying resulting set of basis states. Can you go to that part?
Where did I say that? Is it where I mentioned these 4 points?
Today's class you were just writing it.
These 4 points.
Yeah, the how to construct the thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so the resulting set of basis states, are they all basis states of the Fock space, or are they just the complete states itself?
No, they are basis states of the Fock space, because I am telling Fock space is consists of those states which are according to the symmetrization principle.
Okay, but if they're just basis states, can't you still make linear combination, or like you can get some super?
Yeah, you can also make linear combination of within them, so which is also a possibility. But that is no. Sorry, they are itself a resulting set of basis states. Yeah, so that means that you have, for example, just give, it's much better to talk in terms of an example. So if I talk about a fermionic basis state, for example, so bosonic basis state means this n1, n2, n3, nk can be anything, right? And a fermionic basis state means they are only 0 and 1. So that means when I specify such a basis state, I have already ruled out like the possibility that anything else can happen. So that means I have already applied the symmetrization principle. And that itself is a superposition state. Superposition of all the possible degenerate ways you can have n1, n2, n3 like that. Right?
Yeah, okay. But my only, like, you'll have something like a state like symmetric plus an anti-symmetric state.
Oh, no. Good point. No, it cannot happen. Because if something is bosonic, it cannot be fermionic.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, that cannot happen. And that is easy to see that why not? Because these two spaces are orthogonal. Just like parity. You have this symmetric or anti-symmetric. If it is symmetric, cannot be anti-symmetric.
Okay, yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Any more questions? I feel that Shubham is not entirely happy. Somehow. Are you fine? Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Because in Feynman's book,
because I felt you are not happy. Okay, tell me. Come to the point.
Sir, actually, in Feynman's book, he have given the example of these two electrons spin up and spin down, like they're scattering. And there I had this problem of like spin up and spin down. We can distinguish these two. He was trying to say something like this.
No, if you are doing something to distinguish them, for example, you are putting them in a magnetic field, and then one of them will go in one direction, another of them will go other direction. Then it's a separate thing. But if I'm just telling you that there are two states, this particle can be up or down, then you have to write it as a superposition if a two particle state exists like that. Right. So you are asking about two different questions. So for example, if I have a set of states and the particle can be in this state or this state or this state, and if I do something to distinguish these two states or lift the degeneracy, in other words, yeah, actually the correct word is lift the degeneracy. So what is happening here? This is a degenerate state, right? Whether it is up down or down up, it's a degenerate state. But if you apply a magnetic field, which is a defined Hamiltonian, when you apply a magnetic field, it becomes a defined Hamiltonian. For that Hamiltonian, these two states will have different energies. So then the state will no longer be a superposition state, and they will clearly have two different energies. Right?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, exactly. Now, suppose I have one example, sir. Yeah. So suppose in Stern-Gerlach experiment, I passed an unpolarized beam and I got SZ plus and SZ minus. Okay.
After you pass it through a Z direction magnetic field.
Yes. Yes, sir. Z direction magnetic field.
Yes.
And now if I just take one particle from each of these S plus and S minus and try to scatter them with the experiment, that the carom board experiment which you have given, then we can say, right, these particles are identical, and as well as
Sorry. You take one of this particle, okay, and you know what is that, up or down.
Yes, sir.
Then you know, then of course it is identical and distinguishable. I mean, they're not identical. This is just an entire thing. You know, you have a particle which is upspin, for sure, right? Then you know the entire label. Then this is just a single particle. But the point is that if you send one particle which is up and psi, and another particle which is down and psi, then what comes here and what goes there, it is a superposition of up and down, right? That is the point.
Yeah, sir. In this case only I'm getting confused, sir. But here we know, right? One is up and another is down.
Yeah, you know, but you don't know what you got here. You don't know the guy you got here is up or down. That is why it got superposition. Do you know that? Can you say that for sure?
No, sir. That okay. So okay.
Because
Yeah,
there are two possibilities, right? Because I discussed this yesterday, that there are two possibilities. One is this. The up goes here and the down goes here. And then there is another possibility. Sorry. By momentum conservation, both are allowed. Now, if you don't know which of these two processes happened, and you don't know in a quantum mechanical process, unless you have measured or done something to disturb the system here to know what happened, then your quantum mechanics will tell you this, both of them happened at the same time. So that means the state you got a superposition state here, right? Make sense?
yeah, sir. Yeah. Now I got, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Everything is clear so far?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, you are
Okay.
discussing about the classical and quantum computers.
Yeah.
Can
So
you...
what is the main point? What is the main deal? So the main deal is following. So what a classical computer do? A classical computer simulate a quantum situation, right? So if I have three spins, for example, so these three spins will be up, 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 down, up, down, up, like that, 8 configurations, right? 2 to the power 3, 8 configurations. So in order to map them in a classical computer, you need 8 states, right? So you can call these the 0 state, 1 state, 2 state, 3 state, 4 state, like that. So you need 8 states of your machine. So what does a classical device do? What does computation mean? A computer means it makes a well, this is a little bit of jugglery of English language. It replicates a system, a quantum mechanical system, in a classical device or anything, like not necessarily a quantum mechanical system. And let's say quantum mechanical process is add two let's the classical process, or just the problem is add two numbers. So you need a representation of for each number, you need a representation, a state in your system. So if you are doing it with abacus, so let's say you are doing it with abacus, so that means you want to add 2 plus 1 equal to 3. So you represent 2 by moving these rings, these beads here. So you represent 2, and then you represent 1 by another state 1, and then you say, okay, the total is 3. So that is, and then there is a representation of these 3 also. So you need a device, a physical state, which represents the states of your actual system. And the actual system can have different states. For example, the actual system can have a particle moving in this place, and that will have a corresponding electronic state, which is represented by a set of on and off. So similarly here, you can represent it by a state. For example, the 3 spins, I can represent it by a number 0. This can be written by a 1. This can be written by a 2. There is a nice dictionary that how to do it. There is a simple way to map it. So that means you need 8 different states. But if the system which is inside which is your computation device, the computation device itself is a quantum object itself. So then you are not simulating, you are actually emulating it, or you are making a duplicate of that system, which is a different way. For the original system could be a spin half spin system, and here you might have a 2-photon system, or vice versa, a superconducting system. So that, and we have realized, we discussed it earlier, that all two-level systems have the same, you can represent it by the same Hamiltonian and same thing. It doesn't matter what the system is actually. So mathematically, the system you have is the same as the system which you are trying to understand. But the system you are trying to understand is not easy to control. You cannot, it's like a particle inside a solid. You cannot control it. But if it's an optical 2-photon state, then you can control it. So now instead of these 2 to the power 3 states, you need only one state, only one physical state, a physical spin, or a physical superconducting state, or a physical optical state. Here you need 8 state in your device, 8 electronic state, or 8 bits on your abacus, right? 8 lines on your abacus. Here you just need one, and that's a huge advantage, because for n object, 2 to the power n, and that's a ridiculous number, because if you try to simulate a spin system on your desktop, the maximum limit is, I think, n equal to 16 with the regular desktop. That is like 65,000 some that many states. You need that many states. That means you need that much space. You need that many states to store in your, that means your RAM have to be that big. But in this case, you just need one state, because it is actually emulating the original system. And the system you are, what is your computation device, that is itself a quantum system which follows the exactly same equation. But the only difference is you have control over this thing. You don't have control over that. So then you can ask what operator it can represent and what state it can represent. So that is basically the idea of the quantum computing, right? Does it make sense? Do you think it gives a clearer picture, or it is exactly what you are saying?
Sir, here we need only 3 bits, right, sir? 3
Yes.
combination of 3
Not
bits.
3 bits. No. You
Like-
need 8 bits. No, sorry, not 8 bits. Sorry, 8 states. 8 numbers. You need 8 numbers to represent all the possible states of this.
Like, sir, 8 bits, like 0, 1, like we can put in
Yes.
combinations or different
You
combinations.
need a combination. For example, this guy is 0. It's binary. If you convert it into a binary bit, it's 0 0 0. This is 0 0 1. This is 0 1 0. This is 1 0 0, like that, and finally 1 1 1. Right?
Yeah, so for all these three bits one at one time, so like we can use only 1 qubit for these three bits you are saying.
Yeah, but
right?
the quantum mechanical state is a superposition of these 8, right? So
So
in order
only-
to do that, you need a 8 dimension. You need 8 states to represent this state, and then you have to instruct your computer to add those 8 states in a way such that it represents a superposition state, but it still occupies 8 bits in your classical computer, right? Make sense?
Okay, sir.
Or it doesn't make sense? Do
I
you
got
understand what I'm
something
saying?
like-
Because your state is like 0 0 1 1 0 0 0 1 0, like a superposition of this, right? And you want to know what this state does in your quantum simulation or your quantum calculation. Now, if you want to do such a calculation on your classical computer, you need 8 numbers to represent this one state. Right? But here you need just one equivalent, or 8 number means you need 8 states. So 8 states in the computer, 8 classical states, which is a 0 0 0 0 1 1 and all that. 8 different states. But now here you need just one state. That is the point. Because it is itself a superposition already. Make sense?
Sir,
Or is
that
it
should
not
be
clear?
3, right? If you consider a qubit, suppose we have 8 bits, classically you are representing, and if I consider the emulation
No,
part,
you have
like
3 bits. 3 bits. A 3-bit system has 8 states, right? In this case, in this picture. A bit is this one, a single spin, right? which can be in 2 states. But if you have 3 bits, there are 8 states. Make sense?
Yes, sir. If I have 3 bits, I have 8 states. Okay.
Yes.
So for classical computer, I need 8 numbers.
Yes.
Now, but in quantum computing,
8 number means 8 physical states.
switches,
I am using the state in a defined sense here. I mean the state of your physical device.
so basically I can take it as a switch, like up or
Yeah,
down.
you need 8 configurations. Let's say 8 configurations. That's the best way to say it.
Yes, sir. 8 configuration. Now, now suppose in quantum mechanics, in quantum computing, when you are saying, then also we need 3 configuration, right? Because
No, you just need one state or one quantum mechanical state, which is a state of 3 particles. And this one configuration contains the 8 superposition already inside until measured. Right?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now I am getting. So
And that is the whole point of this game. Right? One physical state, one physical configuration that contains that 8 information of the 8 state already inside. And that is the whole thing about supremacy. And then the point boils down to that when you are adding 2 plus 2 equal to 4, it may not be the best thing to do in this kind of computer probably, but these are open questions. That does it actually make this kind of arithmetic operation faster or something? But how do you do, because now your calculation become probabilistic. So how do you extract actual information within this probabilistic framework? So that is the game. That's the thing people are trying to do. But can you see the advantage, the supremacy, where the supremacy is?
Yes.
yeah,
That means if you want to simulate a n particle system in a quantum system, you need a n particle single quantum state, single Q state of n particles. But if you want to simulate a n particle system in a classical computer, this is quantum computer, you need 2 to the power n state or configuration. That means your RAM has to be that big. But the question here is different. The system is you have a single state. There is only one state, but the state is made of n particles. And how do you make sure these n particles are coherent or not? Whether they are interacting with classical world, and whether they are collapsing or not. So those questions are different level of challenge. But in terms of requirement, you just need one state here, and this state or one configuration or one quantum state, and in this case you need 2 to the power n configurations. Okay. Make sense?
Sir, so when you talk about information, etc., is it always spoken only in terms of superposition states, or do you talk about basis states also? Because then that gives rise to the problem of measurement also, as to which state it collapses to.
So that becomes a probabilistic thing, right? Which state it collapses to and all that. I probably didn't get your question. Can you repeat?
Yes, sir. Like, are you going to explain everything in this in terms of a superposed state itself, or do we still describe it in terms of basis states?
No, I will describe in terms of superposed state, but at the end, the operation will will collapse, because finally you will do a measurement and get a number, right? And that number will be a particular state. Now these are not so clear to me either.
Exactly. So is it going to be? I'm confused whether it's going to be something like the pure ensemble that we spoke of, or
no. That's a different question. So you are asking one step beyond. So that is a subject matter of quantum computing, and that is a complex question. And I don't know I cannot answer it. I mean, I know something, but not very that well that I can answer you very quickly. The point is that when I do an actual calculation, that's what you ask, then what do I do? You do a bunch of measurements, right? Now that measurement will take your state system to one state to another state. You will start with some state, and then you do this measurement, that you do an X measurement, then a Z measurement, and something else. or you don't even do a measurement, you do some filtering and then you keep doing that. So and finally you will get some measure, you will do some measurement. So whenever you do a measurement on part of a state, you will end up with a mixed ensemble, of course. Now how do you, let's say you want to do an operation which is 2 plus 2 equal to 4. So your system is actually an entangled superposition state. What set of operations you will do such that you get an answer which is a mixed ensemble, which is a statistical answer, and what statistical answer will represent 4 exactly? So that is a question. So that question I don't know, that there is a set of states how one can do it, but you see that has to be the process. The process is one state will represent 2, one state will represent, another state will represent these 2 and both are same, and then another state will represent 4. Now this can be a mixed state, this can be a superposition state or something. So that you have to define and you have to prepare your system according. I mean, you have to define a protocol that what you will call that. Just like in the case of abacus, you said that this is your this 1 bead means 1, this 2 bead means the number 2, like that. So similarly, there has to be a representation that has to be in any quantum, and this representation is classical because at the end you are measuring, and the measuring means it had collapsed. At collapse means it became classical. But what happens in between, the dynamics and all, that is quantum. Right? Make sense?
Yes, sir. So do you, I mean, in the protocols, do they use something like, I remember you mentioning you can drive the system to a particular state.
Yeah, you can
So-
steer the system. There is a,
Yeah.
but there is, that requires something called projective measurement, which I didn't discuss. And I don't know if you're learning it in quantum information. So projective measurement is a measurement, a regular measurement collapses the system into a particular state. But a projective measurement itself interacts, the measurement itself interacts with the system and changes the system. Whatever you are using to measure, so that couples with the system. So the Hamiltonian changes and you don't know how it changed. So your answer becomes uncertain and statistical because of that. So that is the way, because if you are doing a regular measurement, of course you know what state you will get. But if you are doing a projective measurement, then you are getting some superposition and some complicated thing will happen, but that's a different discussion. But there is a way to steer a state, which means you do a set of projective measurement and you, sorry, I am using a very bad terminology. So projective measurement is the regular measurement, and the special kind of one I am calling is this POVM. I forgot the full form. This is some special kind of measurement. Projective measurement is the kind of measurement we have learned throughout quantum 1 and 2. This special kind of measurement is something which couples with the system and changes the Hamiltonian and makes the outcome uncertain in a statistical sense. So that's a different discussion. But to come back to your question, is that what we do in a quantum computation actually? You represent a state with represent a physical quantity which is something you are trying to calculate, physical quantity or a physical idea or a number in terms of a quantum mechanical state, and that state could be a superposition state. And then you do something on that which emulates the operation of the system, and then at the end you measure something, and that measurement again represents a state of the system you are trying to simulate. So this whole process, the main supremacy is gained in the process in between, where the system is evolving and you are exploring these 8 channels at the same time in the superposition. And that is where the main idea is. But to go to the more know-how, that how exactly you do it, that I don't know. I am not an expert in that. But this is roughly the idea. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. So this is the whole point. I mean, you should understand those things, because I see that whenever a topic becomes a fancy topic, there are a lot of junk material comes in the market and people jump around those things instead of going into the actual matter. So so one needs to be careful about those scenarios. So one more thing I wanted to state is, yeah, so one have to understand that what does a computing means. Now there so this is, so there is no doubt in that statement that a quantum computer will be better than a classical computer when you are emulating a quantum system, because they one state represent one state. But there is no such guarantee when you are emulating a classical system. For example, if you are adding 2 plus 2 equal to 4, it's a classical, simple classical operation. Is a quantum computer better in that kind of thing? Not necessarily. No guarantee. But it is definitely better if you are trying to simulate a quantum or emulate a quantum system. Right? That's the point. Because it can become, this 2 plus 2, 4 can become actually a very difficult problem. I don't know if it is, but it can be. And that was the idea of Feynman, who said that that it might be better to again, the word simulation and emulation is not used very carefully, but he meant to say it is better to simulate a quantum system with a quantum system rather than simulating a quantum system with a classical system. That was his idea, and that idea is basically the core point of quantum computing. Okay, clear? And in this boson fermion language also we are seeing that there is a huge number of statistical degeneracy, or a huge number. I mean, there is no point of using the word. It's like a double use of the same word. There is a huge number of degeneracy, but it all points to one single state within the symmetrization postulate. When you look at the symmetrization postulate, and that single state is your total symmetric and or antisymmetric combination. That is why I brought up this point in the same context. Is it all clear? Can we stop?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, one doubt I have. I searched for this. It's off topic. I searched for this answer, but I didn't got.
What
So,
answer?
suppose we have we consider this quantum mechanical system a state gate in Hilbert space.
Hmm.
In case of quantum computers, like how do we match this? Like how do we use this abstract Hilbert space in computing part? That I didn't.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
So any state of